On January 6, 2025, a 21-year-old delivery worker named Nguyen Xuanjate walked out of his family home in Lang Sn, Vietnam. It was a day like any other, the start of a routine workday that promised nothing out of the ordinary. He climbed onto his motorbike, probably thinking about the deliveries ahead, the roads he knew so well, and maybe what he'd have for dinner that night. He left for work, just as he had dozens of times before, but this time, he never came back. In those first few hours, there was no panic. His family figured his phone probably died, or maybe he decided to stay over at a friend's place after a long day. Young people sometimes fall off the grid for a day or two. It's easy to invent 100 harmless reasons for a missed call or an unread message. So, they waited. They hoped. But as the hours turned into a full day, that hope began to crack. His phone kept going straight to voicemail. The messages they sent him remained unread, marked with that single, lonely check mark. They started calling his friends, his coworkers, anyone who might have seen him. The answer was always the same. No one knew where he was. The knot of worrying in their stomachs tightened with every unanswered call. By the third day, the family's denial had shattered completely. This wasn't a dead phone or a spontaneous trip. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. They went to the local police station and officially reported Nguyen Xuanjate as a missing person. The official investigation began, but in these early stages, it moved slowly, bogged down by procedure and a lack of immediate leads. But while the authorities were just starting their search, another investigation was already exploding, not in police stations or newsrooms, but in the sprawling, chaotic world of the internet. It started as a whisper, a forwarded file in the dark, unmoderated corners of the web. On encrypted messaging apps like Telegram and within private online groups, a video clip began to circulate. It was grainy, poorly lit, and deeply disturbing. We won't be describing the specific content of this video. The details are not what's important to our story. What mattered was the mystery it presented. Where was this filmed? Who were the people in it? And the most chilling question of all, was it real? The vast majority of people who stumbled upon it dismissed it immediately. It had all the hallmarks of a staged shock video, a cruel, elaborate hoax designed to provoke and disgust. It was the kind of thing you see, feel a momentary jolt, and then scroll past, convincing yourself it couldn't possibly be genuine. It was just another piece of sick online theater. But a small, dedicated group of people didn't look away. They were the internet's amateur detectives, true crime enthusiasts, digital forensics hobbyists, and everyday users with a knack for open source intelligence, or a scent. For them, the video wasn't just a shock clip. It was a puzzle, a horrifying puzzle, but one that demanded to be solved. And they knew that where there are questions, there are eventually answers. Methodically, they began to dissect the video, pulling it apart piece by piece, frame by single frame. They treated the grainy footage like a crime scene, looking for any clue, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. They analyzed the background, the sounds, the objects, anything that could offer a breadcrumb. This was the start of a digital manhunt, powered not by police resources, but by collective curiosity and a shared sense of justice. The digital bloodhounds were on the trail. Their attention to detail was astounding. One user noticed the specific pattern on the concrete floor, pointing out that it was a style commonly found in rural construction in certain parts of Vietnam. Another, with a keen ear, isolated a faint background noise. It was the distinct, high-pitched whine of a motorbike engine, a model particularly popular in the country's northern provinces. Someone else managed to clean up the muffled audio, catching a few words spoken in a regional accent that they could place. The clues kept piling up. A user identified the brand of a bare light bulb hanging from the ceiling, a cheap, common type sold almost exclusively in small towns in northern Vietnam. Then came the breakthrough. In the corner of one frame, barely visible behind a stack of boxes, was a sack of animal feed. A portion of the logo was visible, and through a painstaking process of comparing it with hundreds of agricultural brands, someone identified it. It was a local brand, distributed primarily by suppliers near the Chinese border. Each clue, on its own, was a tiny, almost meaningless fragment. But when pieced together, they formed a terrifyingly clear picture. The video wasn't a hoax filmed in some anonymous studio. It wasn't an urban legend from another country. The evidence was undeniable. It was real, it was violent, and all signs pointed to one specific region, the province of Lang Sen, the same province where, just days earlier, a 21-year-old delivery worker named Nguyen Xuanjate had vanished without a trace. At this point, the internet's theory was no longer just a theory. It was a credible, evidence-backed hypothesis. They still didn't have the whole story. They didn't know who was responsible or why it had happened. But they knew, with a chilling certainty, that something terrible had taken place in Lang Sen, and that someone, somewhere, had uploaded the proof. The digital breadcrumbs had led them to the door of a real-world nightmare, and the online world was about to collide with the official investigation in a way that no one could have ever predicted. Just a few days after the clip surfaced, a name started to bubble up from the depths of online forums: Won Sang. He was a local man, known by some, but mostly ignored. No one could have ever imagined connecting him to something so utterly horrific. But the digital investigators, these anonymous sleuths, began piecing together a terrifying puzzle. They noticed his voice bore a striking resemblance to the one heard in the background of the recording. They analyzed the background of the clip, matching objects and landmarks to his known location, and perhaps most damning, they found that several people in his online social circle had suddenly gone silent, disappearing from the internet right after the video started to spread. Essentially, the internet had doxed him, identifying him as the prime suspect before anyone in the real world had even made a move. And that's the truly chilling part. While the online world was buzzing with his name, the authorities hadn't made any public statements. There was no official suspect, no person of interest. For a moment, the internet was miles ahead of the official investigation. As the clip continued to circulate in closed communities and private chats, the pressure on law enforcement mounted. It was like a digital tidal wave building momentum. People were demanding answers. Online forums became hubs for comparing notes, sharing theories, and piecing together clues. Soon, journalists caught wind of the story and started asking the tough questions. The public outcry became too loud to ignore, and finally, the police responded. An official investigation was launched. The suspected location was sealed off and examined by forensics. Suspects were formally identified and brought in for questioning. And then, just days later, an arrest was made. The name officially confirmed by the police: Won Sang. The internet had been right all along. When police entered the suspect's home, they found the evidence they needed, items that tied him directly to H's disappearance. The authorities, for reasons of privacy and public decency, never released a full list of everything they discovered inside that house. And honestly, that's probably for the best. Some details are too monstrous for the public record, but what they did confirm was more than enough to paint a complete picture of the horror. They confirmed the crime took place in Lang Sen. They confirmed the entire event had been recorded. They confirmed the footage that had been circulating was horrifyingly real. And most importantly, they confirmed the suspect had confessed to the crime. Suddenly, all the online detective work didn't seem like wild speculation anymore. It wasn't just a bunch of anonymous people playing games. It felt like a rescue mission for the truth, one that had been carried out in the digital realm when the real world was still in the dark. One of the most disturbing parts of this case isn't just what happened, but how quickly the clip spread online. Most people who shared it didn't even know if it was real. To some, it was just another shock video, created for clicks and attention. Others assumed it was staged, a clever but tasteless fabrication designed to look like a real crime. In a world so saturated with content, a world addicted to spectacle, the line between and what's fake and what's real can become dangerously blurred. And this time, the cost of that confusion was a real human life. This raises a deeply uncomfortable question. If the internet hadn't shared that clip, if it hadn't gone viral, would the truth have ever been discovered? Would this case have simply become another forgotten missing person file? We'll never know for sure. But what is undeniable is that the investigation accelerated dramatically because online communities refused to let it go. They refused to ignore the chilling details staring back at them from their screens. There's a dark and complex contradiction at the heart of this story. The very same internet that amplified a horrific, dramatic video was also the force that exposed the person responsible for it. It spread unimaginable trauma to countless viewers, yet it also forced a path to justice. It violated a victim's final moments of privacy, yet it brought a semblance of closure to a grieving family. True crime is never simple, and this case is a harsh reminder of that. The internet is a powerful tool, perhaps too powerful for its own good. But sometimes, when the real world fails to notice someone has vanished, when the system is too slow or too overwhelmed, the online world becomes the only witness willing to stand up and act. Nguyen Xuan Jade was more than a headline. He was more than a mystery, and he was certainly more than a video clip shared in the dark corners of the web. He was a young man with a family that loved him. He had a job. He had dreams. He had a future that he will now never get to see. And while nothing can ever erase the horror of what happened to him, the truth did, eventually, come to light. It came to light because regular people, strangers sitting behind screens, chose to investigate. They chose to analyze, to discuss, and to care. Justice didn't emerge from the shadows on its own. It was dragged into the light by those who dared to step into them. Thanks for listening. And remember, sometimes the darkest stories aren't found in our nightmares, but in the places we're not supposed to look. Please subscribe for more stories.